Hi there, my name is Olivia, and I'm going to be doing the next in the Encounter series, Encounters with Jesus. And today we're going to be looking at an encounter Jesus had with some of the Pharisees. Actually, an encounter he had when he was healing on the Sabbath. I'm going to be looking at an account in Mark chapter 3, but there are accounts of Jesus healing on the Sabbath in all four of the Gospels. I'd recommend any of them to read, but we're going to be looking at this one today. If you want to follow along, please do. It's only 6 verses. I'm going to read it out and then we're going to chat through it a wee bit. So just from the start of chapter 3 in the book of Mark to the end of verse 6, it says this. Another time Jesus went into the synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with the shriveled hand, "Stand up in front of everyone." And Jesus asked them, "Which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill?" But they remained silent. He looked around at them in anger, and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts, said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and his hand was completely restored. Then the Pharisees went out and began to plot with the Herodians how they might kill Jesus. So this is a short encounter, only 6 verses long, and yet a lot happens. At the start, the Pharisees are looking to accuse Jesus. By the end, they're looking to kill him. Just a wee bit of context, just before this, in Mark in chapter 2, we read that actually there had been a previous encounter with the Pharisees on the Sabbath, where Jesus and his disciples had been picking some bits of grain from the cornfields. Which also would have been deemed as unlawful on the Sabbath. So they were already in the Pharisees' bad books. They already were kind of going against the traditional teaching of what the Sabbath was. So it kind of maybe gives us no surprise that the Pharisees aren't too pleased with him at the minute and are perhaps looking for ways to undermine his teaching. One of the first things we read in this passage is that they're looking for a reason to accuse. They're looking for a reason to get under Jesus' skin. They're looking for a reason to just call him out. They didn't want to learn from Jesus. They didn't want to focus on the fact that he was healing someone, that he had the ability to heal someone, that he was bringing restoration to this man who needed it. He was bringing justice into his life. They didn't want to focus on that. They wanted to be focused on the law of the Sabbath. Were they getting it right? Were they doing the right thing? Were they living by the law? And this focus on the law instead of the miracle that was happening right in front of them meant that they weren't seeking God's heart. They were so focused on scripture that they weren't actually getting to know the one who was behind the scripture. Because of course God's heart is to heal and to bring justice and to free the oppressed, and yet when that's actually happening in front of the Pharisees, all they can think is, on a Sabbath, really? So it kind of shows how far their heart was from the heart of God in this moment. Maybe sometimes I can be like that. Maybe you can relate, perhaps, wanting to get a Bible study done, so just like rushing through it and like taking off my checklist for the day and setting it aside, instead of actually looking to be changed by the words in front of me. I just want to get it over and done with. So I know I can be like the Pharisees in that, getting to know the scripture and not getting to know the one behind it. So that's a challenge I've taken from this passage. Next, Jesus says to him, "Stand up in front of everyone." The Pharisees were watching Jesus really closely. Jesus didn't need to make a scene at all. The Pharisees wouldn't have missed what he was about to do. They were monitoring him very closely. And yet Jesus says, "Stand up." He wants them to get a good view of what he's about to do. No disapproving glares that the Pharisees could give Jesus are going to stop him from showing his boundless love. It's just not going to be a barrier. How amazing is that? Then he asked them a question. And it may seem like a question with a very obvious answer. He says, is it what is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or evil, to save life or to kill? And I think we all think that's a very obvious question. Surely it is to save life, surely it is to do good. Who's going to say the other two, no matter which day of the week it is? But the obviousness of the answer to this question calls the Pharisees out. I think there's a moment of realization for them in that it's such an obvious answer. Surely they should want good to happen. Surely they should want healing to happen on this day. They've completely missed the point of what Sabbath is about. They're more concerned of the day of the healing than that the healing happens at all. And then we're told that Jesus looked round in anger. Now, I don't think of Jesus as ever being angry, but there are a couple times he's mentioned to have righteous anger, this kind of holy anger, godly anger that I know I can't have because I'm human. But yeah, another instance where he had this type of anger is in the temple. He was flipping over the tables and because they turned the temple into a marketplace, and he was angry that they turned this place of worship, God's house, into somewhere for greed, somewhere for money. And perhaps in this same kind of train of thought, Jesus is angry that in this synagogue, in this place of worship, on the Sabbath, on this day of worship, in a place where the only thought should have been things that were good and holy and wonderful, instead it's become a day and a place of rule keeping, not a place of true worship. There's someone sitting in the synagogue who needs help and he's not being seen to. The oppressed aren't being seen to on this day, where of all days where surely they should be. Then we're told that Jesus healed. He restored the man's hand completely, which is incredible. But also it redefined perhaps for the Pharisees, or maybe reminded them on what Sabbath was really about, this day of rest, this day of restoration. And actually also Jesus challenges this day of service. He didn't have to heal this man right then and there. He could have done it any day of the week, but he looked to serve this man in the way that only he could, and he looked to bring about restoration in that way. So maybe there's a challenge for us to look for ways to serve, on a Sunday, look for ways to bring healing and hope to others. Then the Pharisees go to plot to kill Jesus. They have completely ignored the teaching. And in fact, maybe they've heard the teaching and they just didn't like the sound of it. It made them look bad. So they've decided to ignore it, to put it off, to pretend it didn't happen. I think sometimes that can be me. I know in my life it's much easier to put things off that I find uncomfortable to think about, than it is to ask for forgiveness or turn around and try to change. I suppose that's a challenge for us. Let's not be so uncomfortable, by the words of Jesus, that challenge us to be better. Let's not use that discomfort of needing to learn, needing to do better, to let us turn away. Instead, let's make that a good point, a point for doing good and making change, to glorify God. Thank you for listening. Like I said, there's so many more accounts of Jesus healing in the Sabbath, on the Sabbath. I'd recommend any of them, but I hope you're having a wonderful day, and see you soon.